Hello viewers, today we shall discuss the judicial system in India, constitutional perspectives with special reference to the Supreme Court of India. We know that the judicial system of any country normally consists of the courts, the state, the litigants, and in the case of criminal justice, the correctional institutions. Before independence and before the commencement of the Constitution of India in 1950, our judicial system was a little different, and it was influenced by the practices of the English. But when the Constitution of India came into force on 26th January 1950, a new system, in fact a modified system of judiciary and justice delivery has been established in our country to ensure that justice is secured for all those in need of it. We know that normally there are two kinds of judicial systems. One is inquisitorial system and the other one is adversarial system. The uniqueness of the Indian judiciary is that it follows mostly the adversarial system, but on certain occasions it also follows the inquisitorial system. And when we look at the constitutional perspectives, we will find that our constitution recognizes two kinds of judiciary, namely the higher judiciary and the subordinate judiciary. The higher judiciary consists of the Supreme Court of India and the high courts established in the states. The subordinate judiciary, also called the lower judiciary, consists of the various courts right from the level of district downwards. It can be the criminal courts or civil courts or even the special courts. Coming to the higher judiciary in India, the Supreme Court is the apex court, and in each state we also have the high courts under articles 214 to 237 of the Constitution of India. It is interesting to know that many of the high courts were established in India much before the present Supreme Court was established. In fact, the high courts came into existence under the Indian High Courts Act of 1861, and some of the leading high courts in India like the Bombay High Court, the Madras High Court, the Kolkata High Court, the Allahabad High Court, etc., were established much before 1950. When we come to the Supreme Court of India, we speak about a very unique judicial body all over the world, which has number of innovative features in terms of the establishment, the composition, the role played and different jurisdictions exercised by the Supreme Court. The primary objective of this lesson is to analyze the aforementioned aspects. for the benefit of the viewers. When we deal with the Supreme Court of India, first and foremost, we have to discuss its establishment. The Supreme Court of India was established in 1950 after the commencement of the Constitution of India. But its predecessor, namely the Federal Court of India, was in existence from the year 1937 till 1950, and this Federal Court was the highest court established under the Government of India Act 1935. The same Federal Court of India became the Supreme Court of India, and Article 124 of the Constitution of India deals with the establishment of the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court originally consisted of 7 judges, which number was increased to 11 initially, thereafter to 13, again thereafter to 25, and right now there are 31 judges, including the Chief Justice of India. And the Article 124 of the Constitution also deals with the appointment of the judges of the Supreme Court, including the Chief Justice of India. They are appointed by the President of India in consultation with the Chief Justice of India and other senior judges of the Supreme Court. Before 1993, so-called consultation was only in the nature of consultation with the Chief Justice of India and also other senior judges of the Supreme Court, as recognized by various judgments. More importantly, the judgment in the first judges transfer case, that is S. P. Gupta versus Union of India, decided in the year 1982. In this case, the Supreme Court held that the expression consultation occurring under Article 124 means only consultation and not concurrence. In other words, the opinion of the Chief Justice of India and other senior judges was not binding on the President of India, in other words, the Government of India, as far as the appointment of the judges were concerned. However, the things changed in the year 1993. In the second judges transfer case, namely the Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India, decided in 1993, the Supreme Court for the first time brought into existence a system known as collegium system, and the Supreme Court clarified that it shall be mandatory for the President of India to consult Chief Justice of India and 3 senior most judges of the Supreme Court in the matter of appointment of the Supreme Court judges and also the High Court judges. It was also further clarified that the opinion of this collegium would be binding on the President of India. In a way, this particular power, though not contemplated by the framers of the Constitution is a self-assumed power in the name of independence of judiciary, and when a few doubts were expressed as to the appointment of the Chief Justice of India and the possibility of the opinion of the collegium being split into two equal halves, in the year 1998, a presidential reference was made, and in special reference number 1, 1998, is the advisory opinion of the Supreme Court, which clarified that collegium would mean Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges. It also clarified that the senior most judge of the Supreme Court would become the Chief Justice of India, and that in case of any difference of opinion as regards the appointment of Supreme Court judges and others, the majority opinion of the collegium would be binding on the President. In a way, this judgment cemented the position of the Supreme Court, that of a predominant position with regard to appointment of the Supreme Court and High Court judges as compared to the executive power of the state. And in the year 2015, again an attempt was made by the Government of India through the Parliament to take back the primacy of the executive in appointment of Supreme Court and High Court judges by amending the Constitution. The 99th Constitutional Amendment and the enactment of the National Judicial Commission Act in the same year proposed that it would be the duty of the new National Judicial Commission to appoint, rather to recommend the appointment of the judges to the Supreme Court and the High Courts, and it wanted to discontinue the primacy of the collegium system. This was once again challenged by the Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association and the 5 judges bench of the Supreme Court by a majority of 4-1 declared both the 99th Constitutional Amendment as well as the National Judicial Commission Act as unconstitutional on the primary ground that the same would be affecting independence of the judiciary, which is a basic feature of the Constitution. In other words, the primacy of the Supreme Court's collegium has been maintained and restored, and the same is continuing even today. This is as far as the appointment of the judges of the Supreme Court are concerned. When it comes to the role of the Supreme Court of India, it is pertinent to note that it plays different roles under different circumstances. For instance, it plays the role of guardian of fundamental rights under Article 32. It plays the role of an umpire in settlement of federal disputes under Article 131. The judgment or the law declared by the Supreme Court shall be binding on all the courts within the territory of India under Article 141, which makes it the final interpreter of the Constitution as well as law. Under Article 143, the Supreme Court may advise the President of India on any question of fact or question of law referred to it and which involves any question of constitutional importance. Therefore, the Supreme Court plays multiple roles as far as the judicial functions are concerned. The Supreme Court of India exercises different kinds of jurisdiction. First, it is a court of record. Under Article 129, it is declared that Supreme Court shall be a court of record, which means that the court has the power to punish anyone for its contempt, and further that it can determine its own jurisdiction. It also means that the decisions of the Supreme Court will become part of the record and they will be binding on the smaller benches and also the subordinate courts, including the high courts, as authoritative precedents. By exercising its power under Article 129, the Supreme Court has punished number of contemners who tried to lower its image either by various utterances or even publications. The second important kind of jurisdiction exercised by the Supreme Court is original jurisdiction. Here, there are two provisions of the Constitution which confer the original jurisdiction on the Supreme Court. First, Article 32. The last fundamental right guaranteed to all the persons in India is the right to constitutional remedies, guaranteed by Articles 32 to 35 of the Constitution. Article 32 categorically declares that any person whose fundamental rights are violated may approach the Supreme Court by filing a writ petition and to claim appropriate relief. Under Article 32, therefore, the Supreme Court is designated as the guardian of fundamental rights. Today, when we look at scores of landmark judgments delivered by the Supreme Court, which protected the fundamental rights and human rights of various sections of citizens in India, it is solely because of this original jurisdiction exercised by the Supreme Court. In fact, the public interest litigation, popularly known as PIL, is the result of exercising this original jurisdiction under Article 32. Coming to the second kind of original jurisdiction, it is exercised under Article 131 of the Constitution. Whenever there is a dispute between the Union and states, or the states inter se, or Union and some states on one side and other states on the other side. And in this sense, the Supreme Court acts as an umpire in the matter of federal disputes. This jurisdiction, however, can be excluded in the case of settlement of interstate water disputes under Article 262, Clause 2. The other kind of jurisdiction is review jurisdiction. The Supreme Court exercises the power to review its own judgments under Article 137 of the Constitution. If the court feels that certain important issues or the facts were not brought before it when it decided the matter, or certain new developments have taken place. In such cases, to prevent the miscarriage of justice, Supreme Court can review its own decision. Apart from the review jurisdiction, there is another unique jurisdiction vested in the Supreme Court, namely the advisory jurisdiction. Under Article 143 of the Constitution of India, the President may refer any question of fact or any question of law which in his opinion involves a question of general importance or which requires constitutional interpretation by the Supreme Court. He may refer the matter to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has the discretion either to entertain such reference or even to reject it. When it entertains the reference, the matter has to be heard by a constitution bench of 5 judges, and the opinion of the Supreme Court may not be binding on the President of India, that is the Government of India. However, in many judgments it was held that the advisory opinion may have the value of authoritative precedent, at least in respect of the lower courts. Yet another jurisdiction exercised by the Supreme Court is, in fact, it is a self-assumed jurisdiction, the jurisdiction to entertain curative petitions under Article 142 of the Constitution of India, which is a post-2000 phenomenon. In Ashok Kumar Hurra versus Rupa Ashok Kumar Hurra, the Supreme Court recognized that in order to do complete justice to any order or direction given by the court and also to prevent miscarriage of justice, the Supreme Court can entertain a second review, that is, when the first review is already exhausted. A second review can be entertained by the court purely at its discretion, subject to certain conditions. And this jurisdiction is extraordinary for the simple reason that there is no mention of it in the Constitution, and the second review is unheard of as far as the constitutional dynamics are concerned. It is only for the purpose of the last resort, that is, after the exhaustion of all the legal and judicial remedies, that the affected party may approach the court in the form of curative petition. Under Article 145 of the Constitution, the Supreme Court has the power to make number of rules. This is called rule making power or rule making jurisdiction. Whether it is in relation to fundamental rights or in relation to public interest litigation or appeals, the Supreme Court has been making number of rules by exercising its power under Article 145. Therefore, it can be mentioned that the Supreme Court has the broadest jurisdiction in the world as compared to any other apex court, whether it is the Federal Supreme Court of USA, High Court of Australia, Supreme Court of Canada, or House of Lords of England, or even Supreme Court of England established recently. And the Supreme Court has been maintaining its unique position since 1950 by catering to the judicial needs of all the citizens and the state alike. The Supreme Court of India has acquitted itself very well to meet the objectives under the Constitution and at the same time the challenges posed by the modern developments. It has established itself as the final interpreter of the Constitution. It has also exhibited judicial activism when the state's political organs, namely legislature and executive, fail to discharge their constitutional obligations. Sometimes the court also has indulged in judicial policy making in the absence of any necessary legislation by the parliament or state legislatures. The best example is in the case of Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan in 1997, wherein the Supreme Court issued number of guidelines relating to the prevention of sexual harassment of working women in India. It was only in the year 2013 that the Parliament could enact a law to deal with such an issue. The Supreme Court also applied speed breakers on the misuse of the Article 356 with regard to imposition of President's rule by way of its judgment in S.R. Bommai versus Union of India. The Supreme Court has effectively amended the Constitution, though not in the technical sense. In 1973, in the famous fundamental rights case, that is Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala, by imposing restrictions on the amending power of the Parliament in the form of basic structure theory. And today, even brute majority secured by any political party in the Parliament or in majority of the states cannot make any changes as far as these basic features of the Constitution are concerned. The Supreme Court is the most respected institution in the country today. If we look at two important judgments delivered in August 2017, one in the case of triple talaq, in the writ petition filed by Saira Banu and others versus Union of India, and other in the case of right to privacy, that is in the writ petition filed by K.S. Puttaswamy against Union of India. If we analyze both the judgments, we can certainly conclude that the Supreme Court has rendered landmark judgments which would help, on one hand, the divorced Muslim women by way of triple talaq, which is not traditionally accepted even by Islam in the case of Saira Banu, and by declaring that right to privacy is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. One can explain such judgments in hundreds. The fact remains that in the Indian judicial system, Supreme Court has become a sentinel qui vive, and the position of the Indian Supreme Court remains unique throughout the world. Dear viewers, I hope that after listening to this lesson, you have understood the judicial system followed in India as laid down by the Constitution, with special reference to the Supreme Court of India. Let's meet in the next lesson. Thank you.